Okay, greeting folks. Let's talk about educational philosophy. As you are aware, educational philosophy is uh, is a subset of philosophy in general. As you are aware that in the previous video we talked about the major philosophies that has four pillars. They are idealism, realism, uh, pragmatism, and essentialism. Coincidentally, educational philosophy also has four pillars, namely perennialism, existentialism, uh, progressism, and lastly, reconstructivism. Now, I will cover philosophy in more detail, so there will be an individual video for each. I believe that educational philosophy is one of the major building blocks of understanding curriculum and curriculum design as a whole. Well, let's begin with the notion of philosophy itself. Philosophy it's derived from the Greek word philos means love, and sophia means wisdom. So basically, it denotes the love of wisdom. Now, the bigger question that one needs to know is, how is philosophy related to curriculum design? As I told you, there are four foundations to curriculum design, and in one of the previous instructional videos we talked about the foundation, or the foundations to curriculum is that is the roadmap in which the vehicle will travel through. So let's talk about the notion of the importance of philosophy. For centuries, philosophers have been interested in such concepts as morality, goodness, knowledge, truth, beauty, and our very existence. Among the questions philosophies ask are: what is the truth? Why do we say what we say? What is correct? Who is false? How do we know what we know? See, that's a very important thing. How do we know what we know? What is reality? Is reality what is presented to us by politicians? Is reality what is presented to us by industrialists? Or reality produced by administrators? What things can be described as real? What is the nature of thought and thinking? What is special about being a human being? Is there anything special about being alive at all? Another most important thing in contemporary times, particularly in Malaysia, what is ethics? What does it mean when something is right or wrong? How do you describe what is good and what is bad? What is beauty? How do beautiful things differ from others? So these are the strong questions that one, as a philosopher, one needs to engage in. Among other things, philosophers like to wrestle is the philosophy of education recognizes that development of civil society depends on education of the young as responsible, thoughtful, enterprising citizens, which is challenging task requiring deep understanding of ethical principles, moral value, political theory, aesthetics, economics, not to mention understanding children themselves. Philosophy is a starting point of the curriculum decision making, as I mentioned earlier. Is the basis for all subsequent decisions regarding curriculum. Philosophy becomes the criteria for determining aims, selection, organizing, and implementing curriculum in the classroom. So a deep understanding of philosophy, or particularly philosophy education, is really crucial for every teacher that walks into a classroom, whether it's kindergarten all the way up to postdoctoral, at a PhD level, because you really need to know what you are doing. And philosophy gives you the vocabulary, the perspective to define your action. The first of the four philosophies is the perennial perennialism. It is actually it takes its meaning from the perennial flower. It basically means everlasting. See, this is a philosophical foundation rooted that things never changes. Things don't change. So it's pretty much um, the one of the oldest form of philosophical foundation to in education. It's the most conservative educational philosophy, has its roots in philosophy of Plato and Aristotle. Remember, these are the guys who talked about the great books and how knowledge is constant, and regardless of when in history you look at it, there are great things that you need to know, and until you know these great things, you are not educated. You know, so they have defined what an educated man is, and they define an educated man by a certain fixed body of knowledge that a person needs to possess. Okay. Um, the second thing is the aim of education is to improve man as man. Since it's easy for them because they have a very fixed definition of what man is, and everyone needs to gravitate towards this focal point. Okay. The next one they like to talk about is what is human nature. See, once again, it's very consistent. They have a very prescriptive definition of what is human nature. Therefore, the purpose of education is to prepare you to become or to possess or to gain this necessary skills to exhibit this nature. So, according to them, human nature is a constant, and you human have the ability to understand the universal truth towards this nature. Thus, the aim of education is to develop a rational person and to uncover universal truths by training the intellect towards developing one's moral spiritual being. Character education should be emphasized. See, once again, it revolves around that notion. The next one is they have this notion that perennialism is based on belief that some ideas have lasted over centuries and are relevant today as they were first conceived. I'm sure many people who come from a very strong religious background and a very strong spiritual background will resonate towards this idea. Now, they also talk about, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of great books. Great books doesn't have to be very theological, although many of the perennialists subscribe to philosophical, psychological, mathematical, science, politicals, and more than just pure theology. So some of the modern interpretation of the great books could be the Robinson Crusoe, War and Peace by Tolstoy, Moby Dick. These are specifically from the Western tradition. Uh, Newton's book on optics, The Sexual Enlightenment of Children by Sigmund Freud, and the list goes on. So we believe that these are books that define the human nature. I mean, our human civilization, thus mastering the content or having full having what shall I say having full understanding of these classic contents will define you being a learned person. Uh, Now, the next issue comes in is the perennialist curriculum.